I've been let loose in this absolute paradise of interfacing and interlining and wadding, and I can't believe that I can just look at it and see all these lovely things that I don't know what half of them are.
Now we come to the interesting bit of how we actually put the quilt sandwich together. This all arose because Callum has made a quilt top. It's called a flimsy or a topper, and this is the first time he's done any quilting, and he's made a really nice job of it. I'm not going to look too closely at the corners, and I see that it could do with a decent press because he hasn't pressed all the seams as he should have done on the back. So this is ready now to go to the next stage. So I'm going to show you on smaller pieces 3 different ways of doing that. So I've got a top piece, I've got some wadding, this is the warm and natural, and then I've got a backing piece. So I need to lay it with my backing piece face down. These are cut to the same size, and they're cut about 5 centimetres at least bigger all round than my finished quilt. You always leave some extra at the outside, and then lay your quilt piece on top and make sure that it's reasonably centred. I have got, what have I got? About 5 centimetres on each side, and make sure that it's fairly square. Now we've got to attach it together. So the first way I'm going to show you is using this 505 temporary spray, which I find really handy. Fasten all 3 sides together. Bear in mind that it's more of a job on a much bigger piece, but it's still manageable. So do this in a ventilated space and spray it. This is the 505 spray that you just spray lightly on your backing piece, and then you roll this on top of it and lay it down and smooth it as you go. Get that one out of the way, and then we'll take this end back, roll it back, and I can feel where it's glued. I can feel it's already stuck down quite nicely. This is only temporary, so if you do it wrong, you can redo it. Light spray is all you need, and then roll this one down on top of it and smooth it out nicely like that. Then we're going to do the same. We're going to put the topper on the top, so I'll lay this in position, smooth it out, and when you've pressed it nicely, you shouldn't have any ridges in it. It's all part of the pressing process. And this time I'm going to spray and try and stay within where this is going to go. Lay it down and smooth it out. You can feel it because it's cold underneath. Turn it back and just spray the back. Try not to get too much around the outsides, because otherwise it sticks to your fingers and it's not good. That's not laying flat. This, you can see now why it's important that you do press it nicely on the underside. And that now is quite nicely held together, quite firmly held together. I would just put some clips on just to hold it, just as an extra thing, and let it set a little bit, and put it to one side and go on to the next piece. I find these quilters clips really useful. I've got big ones and small ones, I don't know why, but they're really helpful in doing this sort of job. So that's the first one, using 505 spray. Pernicious stuff, so make sure you use it in a ventilated space and have something to cover your work surface, otherwise you have a gluey work surface. The second method of making a quilt sandwich is a more traditional method using pins. That it's much easier on a small piece. Once again, backing fabric face down. The next layer is the batting, just laid on top, and then on top of that goes my piece of topping, and it wants to be centred, so I'll just check that I've got it reasonably centred. I need to pin this, and I'm going to use these quilters pins, which have got a bend in them, and they're less hard on your fingers. On a small piece like this, I would normally just use ordinary sewing pins, but on a much bigger piece, you want to use these quilting pins. So you start in the middle and you put it through, and it's a good idea to have something underneath you to protect your table. Don't fasten it, just leave it open, and then you want to put them I usually use my hand width as a guide. Spread it down, put your pin in. We should now have our layers fastened together reasonably well. Turn it over, and lo and behold, on this side you can see it's all crinkly. So what you've got to do is spread the crinkles out and adjust your pins. So pin again from this side. This is much worse on a much bigger piece. It's much more difficult. We'll leave the middle one where it is, spread out and pin. Move the crinkles out of the way. Put the pin on the inside, because when we take that one out, we can get rid of the pin there. That one's not too bad. So just turn it over and see what it looks like. That's not too bad. And once again, there's a crinkle there, so we'll go here. So you keep on doing this until you've got rid of all the crinkles, and the two are laying nice and flat on the three are laying nice and flat on both sides. And then finally I'll just put one in the corners just to secure it. And then when you're sewing them, you would take the pins out as you come to them. So it's held together nice and securely and hopefully nice and flat. So I'm quite happy with that now. I think that's nice and flat. So I'll take all the pins out of the back, double check that I'm happy. Yeah, that's okay. And then I'll just go around and close these. So that I can put to one side now, and I know it's not going to move because it's well secured and it's ready to sew. If I use the glue, the 505 spray, there's nothing to remove. And it does seem to hold it quite a long time. And I have left them for quite a long time, believe me. So that's pinning. That's the traditional method of pinning. The final method of making a quilt sandwich that I'm going to show you is using hand basting, which again is a traditional method. It's a little bit more time consuming, but there's nothing in the way of when you're sewing. There's no pins, there's no hardware. It's easy to undo because you use big stitches. And it's a method that I like. If I'm not in a hurry, I'll do it this way. So you start in exactly the same way. You lay your backing fabric face down, you lay your batting on top, smooth it all out so that it's nice and flat. And for whatever reason, it doesn't get as tangled up, as lumpy when you're doing it this way. I think it's because you're not lifting the fabric so much, you're not disturbing it, so you lay it nice and flat on your work surface. And I just, creature of habit, I always check that I've got it reasonably centered. A needle with a length of basting thread, quite a long length, which I've doubled over, and I've put a knot in the end of it. And I'm just going to start off in the top right hand corner, and I'm going to take a large horizontal stitch. And I'm going to go about 4 inches and take another large horizontal stitch. Hold it flat all the time. Pull it so that it's not dragging the material. Another 4 inches. Hold it flat because you don't want to distort all your carefully laid out fabric that you've not got any creases in. And then I'm going to move across 4 inches and do the same and go back the other way. And again, the distance isn't critical, it's just so that your fabric is held at regular gaps and so it won't move. And when I come to the end of my thread, I'm just going to take another stitch and I'm going to not secure it, I'm just going to leave it loose like that. I'm going to tie a quilter's knot in the end of here. So if I hold my needle in one hand and my thread in the other, I'm going to lay it over the needle and wrap it round. And then hold that tightly and slowly pull the thread through and then I end up with a nice tidy knot at the end. So I'm ready to go again. So 4 inches across approximately, and then big stitches. I hope this piece is going to be long enough. Probably isn't. Just. So there you are, that's all nicely hand basted. If you look on the back, it should be nice and flat. That's okay. And when you're sewing, when you're actually stitching in the ditch, as you come to a piece of thread, just snip it and pull it out, because if you sew it down, it's difficult to take out later. So there are 3 methods that you can choose from. I should be interested to see which one Callum chooses to do for his tacker.